I sat on the edge of the bed, my fingers gripping the sheets so tightly that my knuckles turned white. The bedroom was silent, but it wasn't the peaceful kind of silence. It was suffocating. The faint ticking of the clock on the nightstand only added to the madness growing inside me. My gaze remained locked on an empty space beside me, the spot where Sophie should have been, but she wasn't. The excuse had been simple, almost laughable in hindsight. She needed space, a weekend to clear her head before we settled into the next chapter of our lives, a harmless getaway to find herself. But even when she told me, something inside me had screamed that it was a lie. The woman I loved, the woman who once clung to me like I was her whole world, had been slipping away from me for months. The late-night calls that ended abruptly when I entered the room, the sudden coldness in her touch, the way her laughter no longer felt genuine. There were signs, and I had been a fool to ignore them. But now the truth had come crashing down on me in the cruelest way possible. My phone sat on the nightstand, the screen still illuminated with the words that had sealed my fate. Private investigation report. Subject, Sophie Matthews. Current location, Jefferson Hotel, room 712. Company, Daniel Carter. The name felt like a knife in my chest. Daniel, my closest friend, my best man at our wedding, the one person I had trusted beyond reason. I inhaled sharply, trying to control the storm inside me, but there was no stopping it now. My entire life, my future, my love, it had all been nothing but a lie. I grabbed my phone and stood up, my heartbeat hammering against my ribs. I wasn't going to sit here like some helpless fool, drowning in betrayal. No, I was going to take control, and they were going to pay. The city lights blurred past me as I gripped the steering wheel, my knuckles white with tension. The streets were quiet, the world oblivious to the storm brewing inside me. The Jefferson Hotel loomed in the distance, a beacon of my impending destruction. Every mile I crossed brought me closer to the truth I didn't want to face but couldn't ignore. My mind was a whirlwind of memories, Sophie's promises, her soft whispers of love, the way she used to look at me like I was the only man in the world. I'd built a life with her, given her everything, only to be discarded like I was nothing. And Daniel, the man who had stood by my side through every triumph and failure, the man who had toasted to my happiness at my wedding, the man who had called me his brother, he had been the one to put a knife in my back. The betrayal burned. The hotel entrance was empty as I pulled into the lot, my heart a heavy drum against my ribs. The air was thick with something I couldn't quite name, rage, grief, or something darker that lurked beneath. I turned off the engine and stepped out, the cold night air biting at my skin. My steps were steady, controlled. My mind, however, was a hurricane. I wasn't just confronting them, I was here to end this. The elevator ride was suffocating, the numbers above flickering painfully slow, each being a cruel reminder that I was seconds away from seeing the truth with my own eyes. Room 712. The number was carved into my brain. When the door slid open, the hallway stretched before me like the final steps to my own execution. Every step felt heavier than the last, my breath coming in shallow bursts. Then I heard it. Laughter. Sophie's laughter. A soft, intimate giggle, the kind I hadn't heard in months. And then his voice, Daniel's, low, amused, full of something that made my stomach churn. I clenched my fists. There was no hesitation when I reached the door, no second guessing. I wrapped my fingers around the handle and pushed. The door swung open, revealing the scene I would never forget. Sophie tangled in nothing but a sheet, her golden hair spilling over the pillows, her body curled against Daniel's, her smile bright and real, more real than it had been with me in months. They froze. Time stopped. Sophie's face paled as her eyes met mine, horror washing over her features. Daniel sat up, his posture stiff, but I could see the flicker of something else in his eyes. Not regret, not guilt. Annoyance, like I was an inconvenience. A cruel smirk tugged at the corner of his lips as he leaned back against the pillows, completely unbothered. "Damn, Ryan," he muttered, dragging a hand through his hair. "You really should have knocked." I didn't see red. I saw black. And that was when the storm inside me broke. The moment the words left Daniel's mouth, the dam holding back my rage shattered. Before I could think, before I could even process what I was doing, my fist connected with his jaw. The impact sent him crashing against the nightstand, the lamp toppling over with a loud crash. Sophie screamed, her voice shrill, but I barely heard her. Daniel groaned, clutching his face as he blinked up at me, dazed. His arrogance melted in an instant. "Ryan, stop. Sophie scrambled off the bed, the sheet wrapped around her. "It's not what it looks like." I turned on her, my breath ragged, my hands shaking now. "Not what it looks like?" My voice was eerily calm, even as I trembled with fury. "You're half naked in a hotel bed with my best friend. Explain to me how that's supposed to look." Tears welled in her eyes. I made a mistake." "A mistake?" I let out a hollow laugh. "How long?" Sophie's lip quivered. She glanced at Daniel as if begging him to intervene. I turned my gaze on him, my expression turning deadly. "How long, Daniel?" Daniel wiped the blood from his mouth and gave me a lazy smirk, even now trying to salvage his pride. "Couple of months." Sophie choked on a sob. I exhaled slowly, my hands clenching into fists again. A couple of months. A couple of months where I had been living a lie. A couple of months where I had trusted them both. I stepped back, shaking my head, my entire body buzzing with adrenaline. Then I did something neither of them expected. I smiled. It was cold, calculated, a promise. Sophie flinched. Daniel frowned. They had no idea. I wasn't walking away in defeat. I was walking away to plan their destruction. And when I was done, neither of them would have anything left. I walked out of that hotel room, but I didn't leave as a broken man. No. That version of me had died the second I saw Sophie tangled in sheets that weren't mine, her lips parted in laughter meant for someone else. The air outside the Jefferson Hotel was thick, the neon glow of streetlights flickering against the pavement. I leaned against my car, my hands gripping the metal so tightly I thought I might dent it. My body was still vibrating from the adrenaline, the ghost of my punch still tingling in my knuckles. I had expected anger. I had expected guilt, remorse, something, but Daniel had only smirked. Smirked. That single expression had told me everything I needed to know. He hadn't just taken my wife. He had relished it. He had done it knowing exactly what it would do to me, knowing I would eventually find out. He had wanted me to. And Sophie? She had crumbled the moment I saw her, her perfect little world crashing down in an instant. But was it guilt, or was it regret that she had been caught? I scoffed under my breath. It didn't matter. Not anymore. The old Ryan, the man who had trusted blindly, who had given everything, was gone now. Now I was someone else. And this wasn't over. Not even close. I slid into my car, gripping the steering wheel, and stared out at the city stretching before me. I wasn't thinking about what I had lost anymore. I was thinking about what I was going to take. Everything. Sophie and Daniel weren't just going to suffer. They were going to drown in the consequences of what they had done. I turned the key in the ignition, the engine roaring to life. It was time to begin. I didn't go home. Home was a graveyard of memories now, filled with ghosts of laughter and whispered promises that had meant nothing. I couldn't stand the thought of sleeping in the bed where Sophie had once curled up beside me, where I had imagined a future that would never come to pass. Instead, I drove aimlessly through the city, my mind turning over every possibility, every path that would lead to their downfall. I wasn't going to do something stupid. I wasn't going to let my rage make me reckless. No, I was going to be smart about this. And smart revenge, that required patience. I pulled my phone from my pocket, scrolling through my contacts until I found the name I was looking for. Noah Carter, Daniel's older brother, a man who despised him more than anyone else. I hit the call button, and after 3 rings, a familiar voice answered, groggy and irritated. Who the hell is calling me at this hour? I smiled, my grip on the steering wheel tightening. Noah, I said smoothly. It's Ryan. There was a pause, then a slow, knowing chuckle. Well, haven't heard from you in a while. What's the occasion? I leaned back in my seat, my smirk mirroring the one Daniel had given me earlier. I think we have a mutual interest in ruining someone's life. Another pause, then Noah's laughter rang through the line. I'm listening. Noah and Daniel had always been rivals growing up. They had fought over everything, grades, their father's approval, business deals. Noah had taken over their family's real estate company, while Daniel had always been the reckless, arrogant younger brother who lived in a shadow. For years, Noah had tried to keep him in check, and for years, Daniel had tried to outdo him. But now I was going to give Noah something far more valuable than any business deal. I was going to hand him Daniel's downfall on a silver platter. I met Noah at a bar downtown, a place quiet enough that we wouldn't be overheard. When I walked in, he was already seated in a booth, a glass of whiskey in his hand. His sharp green eyes met mine, assessing. Ryan, he greeted, tipping his glass slightly. To what do I owe the pleasure? I slid into the seat across from him, my expression unreadable. I need your help. Noah leaned back, amused. That's a first. What kind of help are we talking about? I exhaled slowly, then met his gaze. Your brother, he's been screwing my wife behind my back for months. Noah didn't even blink. Then, after a moment, he took a slow sip of his whiskey and let out a dark chuckle. Well, he said, setting his glass down. I can't say I'm surprised. I raised an eyebrow. Noah tilted his head slightly. Daniel's always been a selfish prick, but messing with your wife? That was stupid, even for him. I leaned forward, my voice low. I don't just want to get even, Noah. I want to destroy him. Noah smirked. And you want my help to do it? I nodded. For a moment, he considered me, his fingers tapping lightly against the table. Then he let out a slow exhale and grinned. All right, he said. Let's burn him to the ground. Destroying Daniel wasn't going to be quick. It had to be methodical. Noah had access to everything. Daniel's finances, his investments, his business deals, and more importantly, he had dirt on him. A lot of it. As we sat in that dimly lit bar, Noah laid out everything he knew. Daniel was in deep with some shady investors. A deal he had promised would be a massive success was on the verge of collapsing. If the right people found out, his entire reputation would implode. And Sophie? She was about to learn what it felt like to be discarded. I'll handle the business side, Noah said, swirling his drink. But Sophie? She's yours to deal with. My jaw clenched. I already knew exactly how I was going to break her. She loves the idea of stability, I murmured, of comfort. She thinks she's upgraded to a better life. Noah smirked. Then let's show her what it feels like to lose everything. My grip tightened around my glass. Daniel and Sophie thought they had won, but the game had just begun. I sat in my car, parked a few blocks away from my apartment, the apartment I had shared with Sophie. My grip on the steering wheel was so tight, my knuckles turned white, but the storm inside me wasn't one of blind rage anymore. It was something colder, something lethal. Sophie and Daniel thought they had won. They thought they could step over me like I was nothing. But what they didn't realize, what neither of them had ever truly understood, was that I wasn't the kind of man who just walked away. I built things and I destroyed things. And right now, I was going to dismantle their entire world with precision, with patience. And when I was done, they would have nothing left. Noah worked fast. By the next morning, he had already begun laying the groundwork for Daniel's financial ruin. We met in his office, a sleek high-rise building overlooking the city skyline. He tossed a thick file onto his desk, leaning back with an amused smirk. Your boy is in deep, he said, tapping the file with 2 fingers. Daniel's been over-leveraging his assets for years. If the wrong people get a whiff of what he's been hiding... I flipped open the file, my eyes scanning the numbers. Jesus. Daniel wasn't just reckless. He was stupid. He had built a house of cards, borrowing against business deals that weren't even finalized yet. If just one of them collapsed, the whole thing would come crashing down. What do you need from me? I asked, my voice steady. Noah grinned. Just sit back and watch. It started small. A few anonymous tips to the right investors. A quiet withdrawal of funds from key projects. Rumors began circulating in the financial world. Whispers that Daniel Carter's empire was built on nothing but hot air. By the end of the week, the pressure was mounting. I watched from the sidelines as Daniel scrambled to do damage control. He was putting out fires left and right, but he didn't even know where they were coming from. And the best part? He hadn't even felt the worst of it yet. Sophie was next. She had chosen Daniel. She had betrayed me and expected a better life in return. But what she was about to learn was that she had tied herself to a sinking ship. It started with her social life. Sophie had always cared about appearances, being seen in the right places with the right people. But suddenly, invitations stopped coming. People she thought were her friends distanced themselves, whispering behind her back. Then came the money. Daniel had promised her a comfortable life, but now his credit cards were getting declined, his bank accounts were being frozen. And Sophie? She was starting to panic. I could almost taste her regret. But I wasn't done yet, not even close. It had been 2 weeks since I walked into that hotel room and saw my world shatter. 2 weeks of carefully calculated destruction. 2 weeks of watching Daniel's business collapse. 2 weeks of watching Sophie unravel. And now was time for the final blow. I had something they didn't. Time, patience, control. But Daniel, he was desperate. He was reckless. and desperate, reckless men made mistakes, so I set the trap. Noah had arranged a fake business deal, one that Daniel couldn't afford to pass up, a golden opportunity that would save him from financial ruin. Daniel took the bait without hesitation, and the moment he did, his entire empire crumbled. I sat in my office, sipping my coffee as I watched the news break. Daniel Carter's investment firm under investigation. Stock prices plummet amidst allegations of financial misconduct. Daniel was finished. And Sophie? She was drowning with him. I could picture the moment she realized what was happening, how the foundation of her new life was crumbling beneath her feet. I had given her everything, and she had thrown it away for this, a man who couldn't even keep himself afloat. The poetic justice of it was almost too perfect. But I wasn't done yet. Not until they both knew exactly who had orchestrated it all. Daniel called me, his voice raw, filled with the kind of desperation that only came when a man realized he had lost everything. "You did this," he growled. "You son of a—" I leaned back in my chair, a slow smile spreading across my face. "Prove it." Silence. He couldn't, because I had done it right, because I had been patient, because he had never seen it coming. I hung up. Sophie was next. She showed up on my doorstep, tears streaking her face, her once perfect image now shattered. She was wearing the same designer coat I had bought her, only now it looked out of place on someone who had nothing left. "Ryan, please," she whispered. "I made a mistake." I stared at her for a long moment. Then I laughed, loud, sharp, cold. She flinched. "You didn't make a mistake, Sophie," I said. "You made a choice, and now you have to live with it." She reached for me, but I stepped back. "Ryan, you left me for a man who promised you the world," I said, my voice void of emotion. "And now you don't even have a place to live." Her lips trembled. Get out," I said. Tears filled her eyes. "But I still love you." I smiled. That was the moment I knew I had won. I leaned in close, just enough for her to hear me. "No, Sophie," I whispered. "You love what I gave you." Then I shut the door in her face. Daniel disappeared from the city, his reputation destroyed. Sophie was forced to move back to her parents' house, her dreams of a glamorous life gone. And me? I thrived because I had taken everything from them, and I felt nothing. The world had changed, or maybe it was just me. For the first time in what felt like forever, I woke up to silence, and it didn't suffocate me. The emptiness of my apartment, once a graveyard of broken promises, now felt like a blank slate, a place where I could rebuild without the ghost of Sophie haunting my every step. I stretched, rolling my shoulders as I got out of bed. The cold floor sent a shiver up my spine, but it wasn't unpleasant. It was grounding. My phone buzzed on the nightstand. I didn't need to check it to know who it was. I already knew. Sophie. Her desperate attempts to claw her way back into my life had only grown since our last conversation. At first, it was texts. "Please, Ryan, I need to talk to you." Then calls. "Just let me explain. I was wrong." Then voicemails. "I miss you. Please don't do this." I had ignored every single one because there was nothing left to say. I grabbed my phone, scrolled through her messages, and without hesitation, I did the one thing I should have done a long time ago. Block. The moment I did, an unexpected wave of relief washed over me. It was over. Truly, finally over. I had spent weeks tearing Sophie and Daniel's world apart, meticulously dismantling everything they had built their affair on. And now I didn't care anymore. Their suffering didn't bring me joy. Their pain didn't fuel me, because they didn't matter anymore. I mattered. And that was the biggest victory of all. But even as I moved forward, the past had a way of creeping in. I was sitting in my office, reviewing some paperwork, when my assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, there's someone here to see you," she said hesitantly. I didn't look up. "Who?" She shifted uncomfortably. "It's Sophie." I exhaled through my nose. Of course she couldn't let go. I should have ignored it. I should have told my assistant to send her away. But instead, I leaned back in my chair, considering. I had moved on. I had won. But maybe, just maybe, I wanted to see how much she had lost. "Send her in," I said, my voice void of emotion. A few moments later, Sophie stepped into my office. She looked different, not in a physical sense. She was still as beautiful as ever, dressed in one of those designer coats I had once bought for her, but the confidence, the arrogance, the entitlement, it was gone. Her shoulders were slumped, her hands wringing together. She looked at me like a woman who had lost everything. "Ryan," she breathed, her voice barely above a whisper. I stared at her, waiting. She swallowed hard. I don't know where to start." I folded my hands on the desk, my gaze unreadable. "Then don't." She flinched, but I felt nothing. "I need you," she said after a moment. "I made a mistake. I was selfish. You were exactly who you always were, Sophie," I interrupted. "I just didn't see it before." Her lip quivered. "I loved you." I tilted my head. "Loved me?" I repeated, my voice slow. "Or loved what I could give you?" Tears welled in her eyes, but I didn't care. "Daniel's gone," she admitted. "He ran, left me with nothing. I don't even have a place to stay." I leaned forward slightly, my expression calm. "And that's my problem because—" She blinked, as if she had expected me to take her back, as if she had hoped I would. But that was the thing about betrayal. Once the trust was gone, there was nothing left. "Ryan, please," she whispered, stepping closer. "Can't we just—" I stood up. Sophie froze, her words dying in her throat. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't scream. I didn't curse her name. I simply looked her in the eye and said the one thing I knew would break her completely. "I don't want you," I said. "Not anymore." Her lips parted, as if she had been physically struck. And then for the first time since this all started, she truly understood. She had lost me forever. Without another word, I walked to the door and held it open. She hesitated, but eventually she stepped past me, her movements slow, hesitant, defeated. And then she was gone. Just like that. And I didn't look back. People say that revenge is hollow, that once you get it, it leaves you feeling empty. But that wasn't true for me, because I hadn't just destroyed Sophie and Daniel. I had rebuilt myself, stronger, smarter, untouchable. I wasn't the man who had begged Sophie to love me anymore. I was the man who had walked away, head held high, knowing I was worth more. And for the first time in my life, I was at peace. Months passed. I moved on, grew my business, focused on myself, and then one night, as I was walking down the street, I heard a familiar voice. "Ryan." I turned. Sophie. Her hair was shorter now, her makeup minimal. She looked normal, like just another woman in a crowd. I raised an eyebrow. "Sophie." She hesitated. I just wanted to say, "I get it now." I didn't respond. She gave a small, sad smile. "You were the best thing that ever happened to me, and I threw it away." She waited, as if expecting me to say something, to give her closure, to give her a reason to hope. But I had nothing left to give her. I simply nodded, and then I walked away. This time, for good. This wasn't a love story. This wasn't a tragedy. This was the story of a man who refused to be broken, a man who lost everything and built himself back up, stronger than ever. And as I stood at the top of my world, looking down at the city that had once swallowed me whole, I smiled, because I knew one thing for certain. I had won.